Come on. Quick recap of what we had yesterday. We saw Joseph had been sold into slavery and brought to Egypt. What happens to him in Egypt? Some of the things that happens in Egypt, Joseph. He what?
He got wealthy.
He gets wealthy how?
Because he helps Pharaoh.
Yeah, how does he end up working for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt? That he needs interpreted, and what does Joseph say this dream means?
You're going to have 7 good years and 7 years of famine.
Right, Joseph says that 7 years we're going to have very good harvests, and then 7 years of famine, of very bad harvests. And so Pharaoh puts Joseph in charge of preparations for this. What kind of preparations does Joseph make? Does he have people do?
He makes for an alcohol.
Right, store up the extra grain, some extra each year, and then they'll have enough. Once this famine hits, what happens? After the 7 years of good harvest, what happens once this famine starts?
Everybody buys food.
Yeah, everybody's coming from all over to buy food from Egypt because Egypt has food, including who in particular comes to Egypt to Joseph to buy food?
Reuben.
Not just Reuben.
And his brother.
Yeah, all of Joseph's brothers come except for
Benjamin.
Benjamin, right? Benjamin, the baby, Rachel's other
They
sons,
sent him to Egypt?
kept at home, right? So originally it's just the 10 that come, and Joseph tells them what? What does he tell them when he first meets his brothers? And he recognizes them, remember, but they don't recognize him.
He wanted to bring Benjamin.
He says, right, well, if you're telling the truth that you've got another brother still alive, come back with him and I'll believe you. So he sends them home with some food. How does Joseph make sure that they're actually going to come back with Benjamin? Right, Joseph keeps Simeon there in prison as a hostage. So finally, his brothers do come back. They convince their father to let Benjamin come with them. And they go back to Egypt. And how does Joseph treat them when they get back to Egypt? He has a party for them. He has a feast. He invites them to his house, and he throws a feast for them.
Am I confused? Did they not try to sell us now?
They did.
They did, yes.
And everything's okay?
Well, he has not revealed himself to them. But we learned that he asked them a lot about their family, what the deal was. They mentioned how they had a dead brother, and they've got this young brother still at home. And here, so he's just hosted them for this feast, and they still don't recognize him. So chapter 44, we're going to see how Joseph ends up resolving the situation. And he treats Benjamin particularly well. Benjamin, his only full brother. Chapter 44 on page 35. Then he commanded his house steward, saying, "Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his money for the grain." And he did as Joseph had told him. As soon as it was light, the men were sent away, they with their donkeys. They had just gone out of the city and were not far off when Joseph said to his house steward, "Up, follow the men. And when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks, and which he indeed uses for divination? You have done wrong in doing this.'" So he overtook them and spoke these words to them. They said to him, "Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks we have brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whomever of your servants it is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves." So he said, "Now let it also be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and the rest of you shall be innocent." Then they hurried. Each man lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack. He searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and when each man loaded his donkey, they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What is this deed that you have done? Do you not know that such a man as I can indeed practice divination?" So Judah said, What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? And how can we justify ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and the one in whose possession the cup has been found. But he said, Far be it from me to do this. The man in whose possession the cup has been found, he shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. Then Judah approached him and said, O my Lord, may your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ears, and do not be angry with your servant, for you are equal to Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? We said to my Lord, We have an old father and a little child of his old age. Now his brother is dead, so he alone is left of his mother, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. But we said to my Lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. You said to your servants, however, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. Thus it came about, when we went up to your servant my father, we told him the words of my Lord. Our father said, Go back, buy us a little food. But we said, We cannot go down. If our youngest brother is with us, then we will go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Your servant my father said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, Surely he is torn in pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm befalls him, you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. Now therefore, when I came to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, when he sees that the lad is not with us, he will die. Thus, your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant our father down to Sheol in sorrow. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad a slave to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father's if the lad is not with me, for fear that I see the evil that would overtake my father? So what happens with Benjamin after they leave Joseph's house? He gets pranked. Yeah, how does Joseph prank his brothers?
Put a cup in his sack.
He has this silver cup put into Benjamin's bag with his money and his grain, because again, he hasn't let his brothers pay for any of the food. And then what does he do? After putting this cup in there secretly,
Tell the people to arrest him.
right, he tells his servants, hey, go and arrest them. They stole my cup. And the brothers say, that's not possible. You know, you can enslave us and kill the guy you find it if you find it. And then they find it in Benjamin's bag. So Benjamin is taken prisoner. And first they offer to him, they say, look, keep all of us as slaves. We're guilty here. Joseph says, no, I'll just take him. The rest of you can go home. Remember, Benjamin is the only son of Rachel that his brothers know about. So in terms of this conflict between Leah and Rachel and their children with each other, the way that there was this conflict between Joseph and his brothers, you might expect the same thing between Benjamin and his brothers. And so he says, well, I'll just keep Benjamin. The rest of you guys can go home, seeing how they would react. And how do they respond to this?
No, we can't do anything without him.
Right, we can't go without him. And they don't throw Benjamin under the bus. Why? What do they tell Joseph?
Because Jacob could die.
Right, they say, our father will die if Benjamin doesn't come back with us. And which brother in particular is it who speaks to Joseph here?
Judah.
Judah, yes. And Judah says, our father will die if he doesn't come back. What does Judah suggest instead? Take me instead. He says at the end, now therefore please let your servant, meaning for the sake of Jacob, but why Judah specifically?
He was the one who sold Joseph to them.
So he was one of the ringleaders here with Joseph, but Judah doesn't mention Joseph. Why does he tell Joseph here, I should be the one to stay in Benjamin's place? But why should Judah in particular stay? Remember, Jacob didn't want Benjamin to go with them.
Oh, Judah told him to go back to you, that it would bring him back.
Right, Judah had told his father, I'll be personally responsible. Actually, no, it was Reuben who had said that. But Judah here says, no. Yeah, Reuben first offered at the end of 42 to bear responsibility for Benjamin coming back. But then ultimately, 43, Judah takes responsibility for it. And Judah tells Joseph this, your servant became surety, became collateral for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame before my father forever. So Judah says, it was my responsibility to bring him back, so take me instead. And it's Benjamin in particular, Joseph's full brother, and his other brothers do not throw him under the bus the way that they had to Joseph. Chapter 45. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried, have everyone go out from me. So there was no man with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard of it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, please come closer to me. And they came closer. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Now therefore, it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his household, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry, and go up to my father, and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of your herds and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come, and you and your household and all that you have would be impoverished. Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept on them, and afterwards his brothers talked with him. Now when the news was heard in Pharaoh's house that Joseph's brothers had come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me. And I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat of the fat of the land. Now you are ordered, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Do not concern yourselves with your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each of them he gave changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. To his father he sent as follows, 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and sustenance for his father on the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel on the journey. Then they went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Joseph. They told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and indeed he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. But he was stunned, for he did not believe them. When they told him all the words of Joseph that he had spoken to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Then Israel said, it is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Chapter 46. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, "Here I am." He said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will close your eyes." Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their little ones, and their wives, in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They took their livestock and their property which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and came to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him, his sons and his grandsons with him, his daughters and his granddaughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel, Jacob and his sons, who went to Egypt. It goes through the various lists of them. We'll skip to verse 26. All the persons belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, his direct descendants, not including the wives of Jacob's sons, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came to Egypt were 70. Now he sent Judah before him to Joseph, to point out the way before him to Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as he appeared before him, he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a long time. Then Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh and will say to him, 'My brothers and my father's household who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock. And they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have.' When Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you shall say, 'Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth, even until now, both we and our fathers, that you may live in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is loathsome to the Egyptians.'" All right, 45 and 46 here. When Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, how do they respond? What's their thought when they realize that it's Joseph who's been speaking to them? They're frightened. They're troubled by this. And how does Joseph respond to them?
Don't worry.
Don't right. Don't worry about it. God sent me here. Why? To save your lives. Yes. Why? What's going on? What? Right. He says there's still 5 years of famine left. Look, you're going to starve unless you come here. So it's a good thing that this happened. It's worked out for the best. And so he tells them to go do what? Bring your father and all of his descendants down to live here with me in Egypt.
His father too.
Yeah.
Why are they talking about that?
Your father? Well, he does call him my father in 9. Yeah, actually, he does refer to him as my father rather than your father. No, sometimes he says your father. No, that's Pharaoh. Yeah, Joseph calls him my father. Yes, and so Jacob and all of his descendants come into Egypt, and they're going to live in this area called Goshen. They'll live there as shepherds. Apparently, the Egyptians don't like shepherds very much, so they'll be left alone to their own devices. Chapter 47, bottom of page 37. Then Jacob went in and told Pharaoh and said, "My father and my brothers and their flocks and their herds and all that they have come out of the land of Canaan. And behold, they are in the land of Goshen." He took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" So they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers." They said to Pharaoh, "We have come to sojourn in the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants live in the land of Goshen." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is at your disposal. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. And if you know any capable men among them, then put them in charge of my livestock." Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him to Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many years have you lived?" So Jacob said to Pharaoh, The years of my sojourning are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life, nor have they attained the years that my fathers lived during the days of their sojourning. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had ordered. Joseph provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food, according to their little ones. Now there was no food in all the land because the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. When the money was all spent in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food, for why should we die in your presence, for our money is gone?" Then Joseph said, "Give up your livestock, and I will give you food for your livestock, since your money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses and the flocks and the herds and the donkeys. And he fed them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. When that year was ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, "We will not hide from my lord that our money is all spent, and the cattle are my lord's. There is nothing left for my lord except our body and land will be slaves to Pharaoh. So give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate." So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every Egyptian sold his field because the famine was severe upon them. Thus the land became Pharaoh's. As for the people from Pharaoh, and they lived off the allotment which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Behold, I have today bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you may sow the land. At the harvest you shall give a fifth to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own for seed of the field, and for your food, and for those of your household, and as food for your little ones." So they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my lord, and we will be Pharaoh's slaves." Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt valid to this day, that Pharaoh should have the fifth. Only the land of the priests did not become Pharaoh's. Now Israel lived in the land of Egypt, in Goshen, and they acquired property in it, and were fruitful, and became very numerous. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time for Israel to die drew near, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "Please, if I have found favor in your sight, place now your hand under my thigh and deal with me in kindness and faithfulness. Please do not bury me in Egypt. But when I lie down with my fathers, you shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." And he said, "I will do as you have said." He said, "Swear to me." So he swore to him. Then Israel bowed down in worship at the head of the bed. All right, 47. Jacob and his family arrive in Egypt. They're settled in Goshen. And what happens as this famine continues to rage? The famine continues.
Joseph bought all the land.
The people of Egypt come to Joseph. He's still got these stockpiles. And they buy food from him. They run out of money. And so the next year, so he has all their money. Then the next year, they need food again. And what do they use to buy the food the second year? What do they buy the food with their second year because they're out of money? Not their garments. Middle of 47. Year 1, they spend the last of their money on food, buying it from Joseph. Year 2, what do they trade for food? Second year. Second year, after all their food's gone, what do they use to buy food? What do they give Joseph for food?
Their livestock.
Right, all their livestock. And then the third year, they still need food. Now they have no money, no livestock. Now what do they? What do they have left?
Was it land?
Their land and also themselves, yes.
What? How do you think what? So like they slave?
Yeah, they sell themselves into slavery and their lands. And Joseph hands all this stuff over to Pharaoh. So now Pharaoh directly rules all the lands here except for the land owned by the priests who had been given that land by Pharaoh before. And he gives them this rule that a fifth of their harvest goes to Pharaoh and the rest goes to them for their future. Yes. Jacob gets old. Israel, a solemn oath with your hand under my thigh that you will not bury me in Egypt. Bury me with my fathers. Remember, Abraham and Isaac, Jacob's father and grandfather, had been buried in this, had been buried back in Canaan. Chapter 48. Now it came about after these things that Joseph was told, "Behold, your father is sick." So he took his two sons Manasseh and Ephraim with him. When it was told to Jacob, "Behold, your son Joseph has come to you," Israel collected his strength and sat up in the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. And he said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and numerous, and I will make you a company of peoples, and will give this land to your descendants after you for an everlasting possession. Now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. But your offspring that have been born after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the names of their brothers in their inheritance. Now as for me, when I came from Paddan, Rachel died to my sorrow in the land of Canaan on the journey, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, Who are these? Joseph said to his father, They are my sons, whom God has given me here. So he said, Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were so dim from age that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them close to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your children as well. Then Joseph took them from his knees and bowed with his face to the ground. Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right, and brought them close to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the hand of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. He blessed Joseph and said, The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. And may my name live on in them, and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, it displeased him, and he grasped his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also will become a people, and he also will be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. He blessed them that day, saying, By you Israel will pronounce blessing, saying, May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. I give you one portion more than your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. So, as Israel's about to die, we have this encounter with Joseph. What happens here with this blessing on his deathbed that Israel gives to Joseph? He bless whom does he bless? Right. So Joseph has two sons by his Egyptian wife that were born in Egypt, Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh is older, but Jacob puts his right hand, the more important hand, on his head to bless him, and his left hand on Manasseh's head. So he blesses Ephraim, the younger, more. We've seen this pattern of the younger being favored over the elder before. We've seen it with Jacob and his brother Esau. We saw it with Cain and Abel. And also notice that he says that Jacob says, Ephraim and Manasseh, I will count them as my sons. So what this means is in terms of Jacob's possessions when they get divided up after his death, instead of being divided up into 12 parts, one for each of his sons, one of which goes to Joseph, instead he's going to divide everything into 13 parts, and Ephraim and Manasseh each get one portion. So Joseph's descendants actually get 2 parts out of 13 instead of 1 part out of 12 here. That's what he means by saying he's going to count Ephraim and Manasseh as his sons. This is something good that he's doing for Joseph. He's giving him a double portion here. 49. Then Jacob summoned his sons and said, Assemble yourselves that I may tell you what will befall you in the days to come. Gather together and hear, O sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Uncontrolled as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. You went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are implements of violence. Let my soul not enter into their counsel. Let not my glory be united with their assembly, because in their anger they slew men, and in their self-will they lamed oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will disperse them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He couches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who dares rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. He ties his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washes his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are dull from wine, and his teeth white from milk. Zebulun will dwell at the seashore, and he shall be a haven for ships, and his flank shall be towards Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between the sheepfolds. When he saw that a resting place was good and that the land was pleasant, he bowed his shoulder to bear burdens and became a slave at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a horned snake in the path, that bites the horse's heels so that his rider falls backward. For your salvation I wait, O Lord. As for Gad, raiders shall raid him, but he will raid at their heels. As for Asher, his food shall be rich, and he will yield royal dainties. Naphtali is a doe let loose. He gives beautiful words. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. Its branches run over a wall. The archers bitterly attacked him and shot at him and harassed him. But his bow remained firm and his arms were agile. From the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, from there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. From the God of your father who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father have surpassed the blessings of my ancestors, up to the uttermost bound of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of the one distinguished among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, and in the evening he divides the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them. He blessed them, every one with the blessing appropriate to him. Then he charged them and said to them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field from Ephron the Hittite for a burial site. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it purchased from the sons of Heth. When Jacob finished charging his sons, he drew his feet into the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Chapter 50. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. Now 40 days were required for it, for such was the period required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. When the days of mourning for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, "If now I have found favor in your sight, please speak to Pharaoh, saying, 'My father made me swear, saying, Behold, I am about to die. In my grave which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, then I will return.' Pharaoh said, 'Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear.' So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, and all the household of Joseph and his brothers and his father's household. They left only their little ones and their flocks and their herds in the land of Goshen. There also went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a very great and sorrowful lamentation, and he observed 7 days mourning for his father. Now when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw them mourning at the threshold floor of Atad, they said, 'This is a grievous mourning for the Egyptians.' Therefore it was named Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had charged them, for his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the land of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham had bought, along with the field, for a burial site from Ephron the Hittite. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, 'What if Joseph bears a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the wrong which we did to him?' So they sent a message to Joseph saying, 'Your father charged before he died, saying, Thus you shall say to Joseph, Please forgive, I beg you, the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did you wrong. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father.' And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also came and fell down before him and said, 'Behold, we are your servants.' But Joseph said to them, 'Do not be afraid, for am I in God's place? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. So therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones.' So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Now Joseph stayed in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Oh no, we're not done yet. Still got a couple minutes left. Joseph saw the third generation of Ephraim's sons. Also the sons of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were born on Joseph's knees. Joseph said to his brothers, 'I am about to die, but God will surely take care of you and bring you up from this land to the land which he promised on oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob.' Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, 'God will surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones up from here.' So Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt." Right, so 49, as Israel is about to die, he blesses his sons, each of his 12 sons. Most of these are not really what we would quite consider blessings. Some of them sound a bit more like curses on his sons. The only ones where Reuben doesn't end up terribly well, even though he's the firstborn. He says, "You won't be in charge." Neither will Simeon or Levi. So Judah gets a good blessing. Joseph gets a good blessing. But a lot of the other ones don't get very much in this blessing. And notice here, these become the 12 tribes of Israel. So the sons of Israel, the nation of Israel, the people of Israel are in these 12 tribes, descended from these 12 sons. Jacob dies. They bring him up to Canaan, bury him with his father Isaac and his grandfather Abraham. And then Joseph returns. He's again reconciled with his brothers, who are worried that now that their father's dead, he might get revenge on them. And he lives a long life, and finally he dies and is buried Egyptian style in Egypt. Notice he's embalmed, he's mummified, and laid to rest in Egypt, unlike his father. And there ends the book of Genesis.
Long, like that.
Not that long, not compared to like some of the prophets. Anyway, Genesis, also the next book in here, Exodus, are both really good reads. The first, 15 or so books of the Old Testament have a continuous narrative going from creation up until quite a while. So you get all the way to the books of Kings. You get all the way through the. So in Exodus, you have the Israelites. They leave Egypt and set out for the promised land of Canaan. They finally arrive there after a long time. They wander for a few books in the desert, and then with they're finally led into the promised land. Then there are a number of books, the books of the Judges, as they're conquering and establishing themselves in Canaan. Then the books of Kings. Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Those questions will be due, 41 through 50 questions will be due probably Tuesday next week. All right, so whatever the second day of class we have, because there's some confusion as to whether we'll have class on Monday.